Shalom, shalom. This is Rav Johnny Solomon, the virtual rabbi. Good to see you all. And this is a special gift. This is a special Hanukkah gift that we wanted to share with you. Hanukkah is just a few days away by the time we release this, either maybe just before Hanukkah or on Hanukkah itself. And this is a gift of a conversation which I think is important to be had, but perhaps isn't being given the attention that obviously there's a limited bandwidth that each of us have. But it's a conversation about relationships, about dating, a conversation about faith, about religion and spirituality, a conversation about confidence, endeavor, and trying to build things even in a time where a lot of us are feeling pain and anguish and worry. So I'm privileged to have here with me Daniella Rudoff, the marriage architect, available on her website, marriagearchitect.com. Who is involved, and you're going to tell a little bit about yourself. Very involved, day to day, night to night, 24/7 or 24. Yeah, I think it's 24/7. Even on Shabbos, you work. In fact, you probably work harder on Shabbos than other days. In bringing people together for the sake of marriage, and we've met on a couple of occasions before, and I've been really inspired by Daniella, both in terms of what she's doing, how she does it, and I know that she has a fabulous reputation. I've been happy to make many recommendations to people to come and see you and work with you. And what I wanted to do in this conversation is both for you to share, and to a certain measure, I to share some perspectives about dating, marriage, relationships, under the cloud of war, during the moments of stress, tension, of war. And remember, this isn't just a regular war. This is a time where these are our children, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, our neighbors who are fighting, many of whom we know are still being held hostage. So there's a real sense of anxiety of the Jewish people, both in Israel and across the world. Yet there are people who also are looking for a loved one, not just in terms of somebody missing, but somebody to be their soulmate, somebody who will, in their perhaps mind, complete them. So I'm interested to hear both about how things have been, how things were on a regular basis before Simchat Torah, October 7th, how things have been since then, and how you're doing and how you're supporting people.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Rav Johnny. And I also feel honored to be here because you're such a special person doing wonderful things in this world. Also humbled because I am also human and dealing with the things that we're talking about right now, about being in the war situation. And so everything I'm saying, anything that I talk about, I'm also dealing with. So I would like to just start with that foundation, that premise. So I've been setting up people since 2012, and it all began because people started asking me to set them up. So I have definitely, been through a lot of the different times and climates of, how people feel, both emotionally on an individual level and as a national level, and certainly also as a Jewish international level. I work globally, so not just people in Israel, but also people in the US and people now in Australia and the UK and South Africa, etc. So I kind of see things from a bird's eye view, and also on individual and national, like within Israel level as well. So just giving people the understanding of why we're having this conversation and who I am having this conversation, about these topics. So where to start? Do we start before October 7th or after or since October 7th, right? So, it's always a good question. In general, I find that, it's an exciting work that I do. I love setting people up. And to me, the simcha, the joy of making people happy is, to me, the reason I do what I do. People have, and also because people keep coming to ask me to set them up, I have my way of doing things. I send them an email. This is how I do things, where I meet with each person, get to know each person well enough with, it takes usually an hour and a half at least to get to know somebody well enough to set them up. And when I have an idea for them, I'm thrilled to set them up. I even have a VIP service after that, if I don't have someone and they still want me to do some more work for them, so that's something else I do where I search a network for them. It's like a whole like system that has developed over since 2012. It didn't quite start like that, and it's meaning it developed. Really amazing, because I didn't expect this in my life. I am a marriage educator. So that's where this all began. I became a marriage educator at Yeshiva University. And in America, pre-marriage architect, I was a Jewish studies teacher. I taught for 10 years in America in the modern Orthodox Jewish day schools in the tri-state area. So that's a little bit of background and understanding of where I am here today. So I love setting people up. I think it's one of the most rewarding things to be able to make two people go from being alone to being united and feel shlemut, comfort, feeling complete, feeling that comfortable feeling of having met somebody. And I'm just getting the chills talking about it right now. It just makes me so happy. And the messages I get from people, oh, it's our anniversary, or from the first day we met, that you introduced us, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for introducing us. It's our anniversary. Or, there's so many beautiful messages I get, and it inspires me to continue doing what I do, because really it's not an easy thing to do. So it's just the premise. Okay, this is who I am, what I am, why I love doing what I do. Obviously, right now, let's go straight into why we're having this conversation specifically now. We've had a tragedy, a major, I don't have to say, this October 7th is
a massacre,
a massacre, a nightmare, and has upheavaled everybody's lives, because everyone, as my aunt said, we're all on Miluim. Okay, whether somebody is on the fighting, and of course we're all davening for all of our soldiers. I have children in the army and fighting right now. But yeah, I see my daughters-in-law. They're feeling it, right? And my grandchild, she's feeling it, right? So, and of course I'm getting supplies and mass for the units, and we're all doing. I know every person in the Jewish world is really doing something for the effort, and that is so uniting and so beautiful, and what really is going to help us win this war. So what I found, to answer your question, is a lot, right? That first week, I think I'm telling you what I felt, my own personal feelings in terms of setting people up. Shock, like absolutely. We were all in shock the first week and a half. I think I had to pull myself, literally mindset shifts, pull myself with concept of bitachon and Hashem, the absolute understanding that God is in charge, and that I trust that God is in charge, and trying to pull myself out of this, I guess, a depression, a shock. Like, we can't even call them people, have done this type of thing. Like, you and I were so involved in doing good in the world. It's just so like opposite our nature that somebody could be so savage, in the opposite of good. I remember when the 3 boys were kidnapped many years ago, I had that same feeling. I remember writing a blog about it, and just like, how is that possible? Every day I'm trying every second of my day to try to set up people and try to make them happy, and then the opposite, like entire opposite feeling, of that somebody wants to do evil in the world. So like, we've dealt with this before, unfortunately many times, but this was en masse in such a way that, the shock was so strong. But what pulled me up is that people are counting on me. People are counting on me to still move their lives forward and to make them happy. And I have to be in a state of simcha on a certain level in order to do my work. And so I have to pull myself out of this, what we want to call it, sadness, depression. I don't know, like the legal word of depression, but like, I think we're all as a nation are in depression of being pushed down. And
trauma. We all experience
trauma. Yes, that's the correct word. Thank you.
But it's amazing. You're not just going from trauma to, okay, you're feeling you need to be plugged into a form of simcha to be able to channel that to people, some of whom have been looking for a long time to find their soulmate.
Yes.
So you actually need to get to simcha, right?
Yes. Yes, and I also feel like there's a certain guilt that we meaning anyone who wants to set anybody up, anybody who wants to date, has a certain feeling of guilt to go out on a date, or for me to set up a date at that period of time, and literally fighting, meaning me, I was fighting my natural instincts that or reactions that we all have had, right? Of that shock and the depression and the sadness, and needing to get lift out of that in order to do good in the world, in order to have simcha. And there were different things that helped me through it that I can even review here that I think could be very helpful to people. I just spoke about it. We had my brother came in from outside of Israel to visit, and we had a family gathering, and I spoke about this. I said, one of the things that helped me, we say in Tehillim, Hashem tzilcha. Hashem is, your shadow, and and basically that whatever we emanate, right? We say this all the time with neuroplasticity and with energy and everything. And I really believe in this stuff, that whatever we put out into the world, or, whatever, that Hashem brings back to us. He mimics, he shadows whatever we do. So it's one of the actions, one of the concepts that helped me, like, almost give permission, right? It's almost like we need to have permission to get out of this low state in order to get a more simcha-filled state, in order to continue living b'simcha, right? Now, obviously, it doesn't take away from our being, sad or being scared or being whatever, but it's working on levels of bitachon, that we trust in God, that he's doing everything that we need in our lives and caters it to us. So not simple. That's why I started with the premise of anything that I speak about now doesn't mean that, I've perfected it or whatever, but it's what I am working towards because I believe in these concepts, however hard they are. But then, speaking to the people who I set up, and this is who we're addressing now, giving my feelings about it to them, and talking about how I'm a big believer in each person trying to get to their goals in life. No matter what obstacles come our way, we have to keep fighting, like going up that escalator and, going down escalator, and keep on trying to get up that escalator in order to attain our goals. Whatever, each person has challenges. And I decided to stay in the world of trying to set people up. I could have easily just said, thank you, but I'm going to get a regular job. But when people kept coming, I had to make a decision. And so I professionalized it and made it what I do. But because I see that that is something so special to be able to, I see it as a challenge that is much harder than many other challenges in the world. And if Hashem brought it my way in such an obvious way, by so many, like 100 people came to meet with me in 9 months. It was like unbelievably powerful. And I decided to continue because I really enjoy it. I enjoy getting to know each person and enjoy my relationship when I'm setting them up. We have a relationship, so I'm guiding them through the process. Like later today, I'm having a call with somebody who I set up, and they went on 2 dates, and she wants to talk about stuff. So I want to see, if it's really good for her or not, and if the things that I can guide her through. So that personal relationship I have with each person is amazing. But my going back to what I was saying is that, since October 7th specifically, I still encourage people to keep moving forward, to keep going. Let's say a big question is, a lot of people are in the army right now, right? Yeah. So it's in Israel. I set up people outside of Israel as well. And, so I'm dealing with a lot of, it's very dynamic, my work, right? So, but at the same time, there are variations on the theme. Some people can't be called, like a guy can't necessarily, there are women in the army too. I don't, of course, that's also true. But let's say I recently set up a couple, and he is in the army, and he was coming out of the army, and I gave the number, and he tried reaching her. They were in touch on WhatsApp. She wasn't available when he called, maybe, or they were on WhatsApp together, and they never went out because he was called right back in. So, and he has a kind of job that he can't be in touch while he's in the army. He's on the shatach. He's in the in places where he can't have his phone, and therefore it's a challenge. But where's my role? I explained to her. I said, I did the explaining. Okay, he's in a place where he can't have a phone. She understands that. It's not like something he did wrong, right? When he gets out again, he is going to contact you. In my opinion, don't try to have a phone call. In my opinion, just go and arrange a date, as soon as possible, because he's not sure when he's going back in. And in other words, trying to give background. This is what I do in general, but not necessarily about army stuff. I've learned a lot about army stuff. And so that's an example of that. I have other guys who say to me, oh, I can date, just, I need the right type of person to go out with, and I can, then there are other guys who are like, sorry, I can't. And I'm putting them on hold in terms of when I have an idea, putting my idea, on his, in my notes, and we'll get back to it later. So this should give a little bit of an understanding of things that, and also explaining to the other person in the date, in the setup, that what their situation is. Everybody knows there's a war. Everybody is more understanding of the nuances in that, in terms of the communication. And just my recommendation would be just set up a date as fast as possible. And then people are more likely to follow through instead of, oh, they're just too busy, they're in the army, we'll put it off for another 3 months. In other words, just to keep things moving forward. That's my.
I think that's really good advice. I think progress and not. We talked about paralysis, but we need to then be able to move beyond that, and that works in all other aspects of life. I'll just tell you two quick things. Number one, I actually do weddings, and I was given the details of a couple who I'm going to be marrying in a few weeks' time in a small ceremony, and I called them on Friday just to set up the first meeting, because it's through Tsar, so you generally meet the couple once before you do the wedding. And the bride said, listen, my husband's right now fighting. I said, okay, but I generally meet the couple before we marry. She says, listen, hopefully you'll be able to speak with him, but you have to do everything just through me. And when I can talk with him, I'll let him know, and we'll figure things out. I said, okay, you have to adapt, meaning they're either going to get married in a month or not. But for me to wait for them to both be available for a perfect conversation, which is ordinarily what we do, is naive. So please God that we'll be able to talk, and I'll be able to talk with him on the phone at some point before then, or a few minutes before then, and then we'll figure things out. Which it seems crazy, but that's the reality. That's reality where people are literally fighting for their lives, for our people, and for our land.
Right.
But I'll tell you an idea that you literally have just broken and revealed an insight, which I think is perhaps interesting to you and to our listeners. And I'd put together a couple of teachings I thought I'd share with you. But from what you've just described, I realize there's a great depth to it. During the First World War, Rav Chaim Ozer Guzensky published his responsa, his Achiezer responsa. And some people said, why are you publishing a book during a war? It seems like a really weird time to do that. And he wrote, is this time a time of emergency, a time of grave danger, the right appropriate time to publish a book? He quotes that teaching of the rabbis, where there are cries from the Reed Sea for the Yam Suf, right? And yet the Jewish people want to sing Shir, which is why we have this custom of not singing full Hallel for all of Pesach, because how can we sing full Hallel when people are crying? But then it occurred to me, and so I want to share with you, and the fact that he did publish his book shows us that even in times of difficulty, sometimes, and he writes and he says, still, Torah is important, and Torah is important. If this is a window of time that I have, I should publish it then. And then we know there's this teaching of how kashelas avgam kriyat yamsuf, right? Actually, making matches is like kriyat yamsuf. And you wonder, what's that teaching about? There's lots of commentaries about it, but it just hit me. Kashelas avgam kriyat yamsuf is sometimes it's hard to make matches, especially when there are cries in the background, when there are tainas that how can you do this? Because right, my creations are crying and you're wanting to sing Shira. And the response is we may do it in a more tempered way, just as we do Hallel in a more tempered way. But yes, we need to move on in terms of publishing books. We need to move on because Zavik Zivugim. And so the teaching of Kasher Zavgan Kriyam Yamsuf means sometimes it's hard to make matches, especially in circumstances where people may well question the appropriateness of doing so. After Pichain, we do it.
Yes.
So thank you, because I never made that connection. I think it's a very interesting one.
It's beautiful what you said and inspiring. And I've been posting. I post a lot on Facebook. I don't know if you've ever seen my posts. Cool. And it's very exciting because I love my work. So if I set up a couple, I'm just super excited. I don't know what to do with myself. I post, I just set up my first couple for the week, and it's exciting. And then it really has caused a stir over the last, I would say, 10 years of doing this, where people really like that energy and excitement of seeing the Jewish future. It doesn't mean that first date is going to go to a second date, but it's a start. We need to do the start, the hishtadlut, the efforts. That's our job. God does really, he orchestrates everything, but we also as humans need to do, who am I speaking to? To do our effort and to daven, right? We need to also pray to God. So like all of these aspects are fundamental in the way we live our lives. But what is interesting is since October 7th, it's been hard for me to be as excited. Like I'm excited when I set that couple up. I'm super excited. But it's that, it's a little bit pushed down.
Like the half Hallel, right? You're doing the Hallel, you have to do it, but it's still a bit like it's a held back or, half Hallel, for the first 2 days for Pesach, that there is this celebration, there's an acknowledgement that there is something missing in the world, just like we have with the chuppah and the breaking of the glass, but we still do the chuppah. That's the point. Right. We still do the chuppah and we break the glass.
Exactly. On point. Thank you. And so what I write in my posts sometimes is I realize that after the IDF and the security forces, that my job is probably the second most important job. It's to build the future of the Jewish people. So it's that permission that I spoke about also before. It's what you're saying about the chuppah and how we break the glass to remind ourselves there's still something going on. Like I recognize that, but at the same time, this is exciting and it's powerful and it's positive. Right. It's important that we have positive. We know that the Shekhinah, that God does not rest on us unless we have a level of simcha, of happiness in ourselves. Right. It's that what we exude. At the same time, we're dealing with a very difficult time. There's people fighting on our behalf. And obviously, it's not just on the forefront. There's a lot happening in the world today, anti-Semitism and just regular life, where we have to be concerned with rockets, etc. So, So I think it's a mindset. And that's also another aspect about dating altogether, that I feel that's a really important piece to address. It's a mindset shift that each person, whether they're dating or married or whatever, like a child, everybody has to deal with is this mindset, right? That we have to be always trying to level up even more to a level of simcha, despite the tragedies going on around us or the wonderful things that the IDF is doing, but they're scary, right? Like it's not necessarily all, you know what I'm saying? There's so many emotions floating around. But as an individual, we could be pushed down all the time. And we are trying to push up. And it's effort. It's like, doing bicep curls. It's anything else that's easy to be in the lazy mode, not doing anything, but we need to be building our muscles, our emotional muscles, our mindset, our mental muscles, our bitachon muscles of believing and trusting in God. And they're hard. They're not easy, but I find that for dating specifically, because that's where I do a lot of focus. And I also give courses, they're on my website, dating courses, Date Right, Marry Right, Dating Smarter series. You like the idea, like the concepts. Get it right before getting it wrong, right? Like might as well do it in the beginning to prevent problems. From all of the different, experiences that I've had, I'm able to give people some ideas of mindset. So one of the things that I also think obviously is heavier and harder now that October 7th has happened, is not just, it's really trying to push forward. It's again, the same concept of keeping the momentum going in your life so that you get to the point of married because this person wants to get married. I'm not telling people what to do, but a person who wants to get married, that they get to their goals. And if they want to have a family, then they, if they're at that age, then in order to get there, you have to be at the mindset to keep moving forward. You can't get there if, some people might magically, or I don't know, we'll say magically, but like might meet somebody in some other way. But the mindset and the energy that they're emanating when they meet that person is really important. Like there was a woman who met with me. I got this great story. This is before October 7th. She came to meet with me and it was on video chat because she lives in America. And we had a great conversation. It was wonderful. And she literally like a day later or a week later, I don't remember, she met somebody at a party or something. She said, because of our meeting, I was in such a positive place that it was the right timing to meet this person, this guy, and they've hit it off. They already are so seriously dating. And she says it's because of our meeting. But you have to be in a certain place in energy wise in order for things to work. I mean, it's not a rule. I don't like these rules, right? But it generally happens that way. So I've had this many times actually, where people have had that kind of lifting up of, their energy from our meetings, so that I've had the story happen before. This happened very recently. So, and that's what I said to you before. I have to lift myself up also in order to give. Right? In order to be there for people. So that's why I had to literally work on my mindset. But I'm the same, like I started with, whatever I'm telling people, I also work on myself. Okay. So I just think it's an important piece, because you know how it is. Some people say, oh yeah, this person told me this, easy for them. I'm talking with you, with everybody. I'm not talking.
You radiate this energy of this joy, and then that then spreads to the people that you're talking with. And if they hold on to it, and that's a big if, right? Then they carry that with them, both in sense of confidence in themselves and confidence in what they're doing, even amidst these difficult times. And you talk about giving permission. So it's as if you're not just giving permission to go on a date, not that somebody needs that permission, but permission that, I've arranged this person's going to meet you, please God, it's going to be great. Confidence that this is a good idea, certainly at least invest the time on that date and see how things go, but also confidence to be dating in these moments and in these times. And you're giving all that warmth and all that positivity. And you mentioned that idea that Shekhinah being present with Simcha, which is one of the reasons why the prophets could only prophesy when they were a place of some form of Simcha, that's not quite happiness, but instead joy. And we also talk about how relationship is where Shekhinah is present. And you're saying, if you're going to date, you need to bring a form of simcha, because that's what you're trying to start up, a bit like a starter engine of a car. You're trying to start up a relationship. You're trying to see whether the spark of the Shekhinah can exist within this dynamic between you and this other person. So bring some simcha with you. And obviously, it's tough for you to do, especially given you've got children and relatives fighting. But you're doing it, and I agree with you. That's heroic. It's heroic because, Rav Soloveitchik talked about koach being physical strength and kvar being sometimes holding yourself back for the sake of achieving a certain goal. In principle, a lot of us just want to go under the blankets and cry and say this is ridiculous. it's gvura to get out from the blankets, to get up, to get dressed. And for you to then smile and give off this energy and give those people confidence. That's gvura. And then they're able to meet people. And then, as we know, please God, it can create something special, and homes can be built, and our family, the Jewish people, can grow.
I mean, yes, please God. I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, but again, it's a lot of work. I just think it's so important for people to hear, because I can hear people saying exactly what you said. I just want to go under my blankets. When this whole thing is over, I'll start dating again. And my encouragement to each person watching is really to do the bicep curls. You know, take out a siddur and pray, or take a walk, get yourself going. And you know, the exercise, listen to a great podcast about whatever topic you enjoy and inspires you. I think the inspiration, the higher level of vibration, is really important to get the person more positive. You know, put on some great music and dance, you know, with your kids, or I mean, if somebody has kids, if they're dating and they're with their friend, you know, like whoever it is, you know, just to like get that level of sadness away, or go do something for the chayalim, go do something for the people who had to leave their homes from down south. There are so many efforts out there, and I feel like those give the energy, the positive energy, and connecting with others. And also, here's a very cool piece, spiritual piece, that I've understood and learned, that dating or anything in life gets us to meet other people spiritually. So the concept is that if we are actively going out and helping somebody and connecting with them, then we've achieved a certain level of achdut, a certain level of what we don't understand, why God wants us to meet certain people. You know how it is, all of a sudden you met this person. I have such a great story. You have to go read it on Facebook about this couple who I used to set up in Boca in Atlanta. And just it's amazing. It's an amazing story. But the idea is that if I deliberately say I am going to go, let's say somebody who's dating, okay, and they can't get their mindset together about it, right? That okay, fine. So I'm going to go and I'm going to volunteer, just go on any WhatsApp list. You're going to find a million things you can do to volunteer. Who knows who you're going to meet, right? Like, don't sign up and say, oh, you meaning like just sign off and say, oh, all the good guys are fighting right now. It could be there's a really awesome guy, and you know, his mom is volunteering at the same time and then wants to set you up, or the sister or the cousin, or it could be that he has a reason not to be fighting in the army. He's this awesome guy and he's right there. Like, I'm not saying that a person should hope that that's what's going to happen, and then they're disappointed afterwards that it didn't happen when they went to volunteer. We don't understand. We don't know God's, you know, plans, right? But if we go into that energy of doing good things, like keep doing good things, just keep doing good things, that's our job. We don't have the other job of knowing how the rest is supposed to work. So someone said to me, I met with somebody, and it was actually a mother of a guy who she's trying to set up her son. And what's so interesting is I said to her, you know, she's doing a lot for her son to try to set him up, and she's going out of her mind. And I was, you know, whatever. What I said to her though is, what is he doing besides dating and dating a lot? Sometimes, you know, whatever, people have a lot of suggestions, sometimes people don't. So I said, what is he doing? She goes, you know, like he's going out. I'm like, what hishtadlut is he doing other than going out? What efforts is he doing? So I told her, this is a really cool story, and my daughter gave me permission to tell it. Okay. Like, she always like, you know, tell everybody all the things you did for me when I was dating. And I'm like, but it's your private life. She's like, tell them, you need to help everybody. You helped me so much. So one of the things that I talk about is spending money on hishtadlut, on the challenges that I have. I need to be spending money. This is a mentor of mine taught me this. I never learned the Zohar. Zohar is Kabbalah. I never learned Kabbalah, you know, the mystical works of the deep understandings of the Torah. But she told me this. I don't know how she knows this, but she said the Zohar explains that when a person has a challenge in life, spending money is an effort that's different than just doing the action. It's saying, God, this is important to me. I'm spending money. It's a tool. And when I spend money, it's to get closer to achieving my goal. So this is a beautiful concept for me, because I was like, I charge a meeting fee, and it was hard for me to get wrap my head around that, because I love doing what I do. But I guess in order to sustain doing what I do, there has to be some money involved. But it taught me something, and that's what my mentor was teaching me. She's like, you're offering them an opportunity to spend money towards their goal of getting married. You're not responsible whether or not you're the one setting them up. Obviously, I do everything I can when I have an idea for them. But that concept, so I teach my kids the same concept. So my daughter, when she was starting to date, she did different things that was spending money. And I'm sharing them with everybody, because I think it's really powerful. Okay. One thing she did was, of course, if I had an idea for her, of course I would set her up. But, I'm not just like everybody else in my network. Unless I have a really good idea for someone, I'm not randomly setting up anyone. And the same thing for my daughter. So she asked me permission. She's like, can I go to this matchmaker and so place that might know somebody? I said, absolutely. And there was a meeting fee, and she played it happily, and she told me about it. I said, do you want me to pay it? And she goes, no, this is my hishtadlut. This is my effort. And I said, kol hakavod. I said, I'm so proud of you. Then I wasn't so happy with her pictures, even though they were awesome, but like, I just thought that maybe it would be a good idea for her to get a different picture. Also, another thing you can do for hishtadlut is just to like level it up a little bit more. I don't know if the level means right, like do something else to try to make things work, right? And so I saw something. I don't even remember who it is, unfortunately, but like somebody advertised doing a photo shoot, and I told her about it, and she goes, I'll go. She went, she paid the meeting, the photo shoot fee. I said, I'll pay for it. And she said, no, I want to pay for it. It's my hishtadlut. Mind you, the pictures that came out of it, we chose one of them. She sent it to the person who actually set her up with her husband. Okay. So I'm not saying it's always going to be the answer exactly, but I'm proud of her. I'm proud of her because she took ownership on this concept of paying money, and she took from her own money. I offered as a mom, right? We want to do everything for our kids to help them, but she was helping herself, in my opinion. And it's just interesting. It's just interesting.
Well,
I'm like
we live in a world where people do it. You need to understand it's called an investment in self. We invest in lots of things, and investing in some of the work that I do as a spiritual coach, certainly in terms of trying to find a soulmate, it takes a certain measure of expertise and time and effort and endeavor, and to play Russian roulette and hope for the best may work for some, but generally doesn't work for most. And a person needs to be deliberate in their actions and how they live. And if you want to be deliberate in your journey, go on, or deliberate in the way in which you will, please God, meet people. Ask an expert who's been doing it. As you say, you've been doing it for a long time, and you have years of experience. And for everything that goes right, you also learn things that don't quite go so right. But then that iterates the process which you apply and the way in which you evaluate people, and those errors reduce. Not to say errors, just in terms of understanding. Like all of us become experts in a certain field, and that's called expertise. And nowadays, everyone thinks I can Google everything. I don't need an expert. But actually, anybody who's Googled something and applied that solution, most times it doesn't work. And we need to respect, admire, and turn to those who really do put in the hard work of training and of then putting their knowledge into practice, because it pays off for everybody. Right. And that's what you gain. And I love the idea, though, of your daughter saying, I don't want that investment to be a gift from somebody else, because I need to earn my own journey. And I need to feel that that's something which I'm in the driving seat, rather than somebody doing me a favor, because favors are good, but favors are limited.
Yes.
And when you rely simply on the favors of others, they run dry, because favors are what we do in between things, whereas professionals do things as the priority of the morning, noon, and night.
Right. Exactly. And also it's that confidence, you know, the fact that she did it, like everything you're saying, and just taking that back to what you said before, it's that confidence the person's she came to the date with, you know, that she's the one who brought herself here. I mean, God, I am a very big believer in God, you know, is also part of this, not also is part of this whole thing, but we as people, God wants us to be taking each step forward to get to our goals, and he guides us along the way as well. But I love it. I love that story. I mean, it's so powerful, right?
So I'll just quickly share something, a question that arose. I wrote about it before people asking about the question, but I think it is an important yesod, just about both dating during a time of war and marriage during a time of war, and our general perspective. We talk about mindset. And then perhaps just afterwards, we'll spend a few moments before we wrap up talking about the role of religion in dating and marriage, how one presents oneself, because that's a very interesting question. I get people talking to me about that the whole time. You know, who are they in terms of how they self-label or how they present themselves to make sure that they meet the right person? Obviously, you're dealing with that on a daily basis. But there's a teaching that during a time of drought, the Jews, in fact, we learn actually from Noah and the flood, that when Noah and his wife was in the flood, they physically separated. They didn't have physical relations because it was a flood, a time of great hardship. And within the first few days of war, the kind of, as it happens, I think I was writing something for Daf Yomi, the question is war like a flood, right? Is war like a flood that we should all hold back, both in terms of physical relations, but also the pursuit for relationships itself? And there's a ruling, there's a tshuva, there's a response by Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg, the author of the response at Tzitz Eliezer. And he distinguishes between et tzara and et milchama. Et tzara is where we feel helpless. There's a flood. I don't even know where it started, how it ends. I have no idea what it's going to be. That's something which I have to deal with. And so in that moment, I cry out to God and I say, help. And this is what Rambam talks about in his laws of Taniyot, the laws of fast, where we pray out to God because we feel completely helpless. Right. But then et milchama is when bad things do bad things to us, or where there's a need for us to respond to bad events. And so milchama, rather than being a pure negative, of course, it comes with terrible loss of life. But when we fight, we try and make things better. Right. Of course, there's been a terrible massacre. We're trying to fight to make things better. Right. You know, we send our sons and daughters to fight in order to improve the security of our people and our land. Right. There's a to'elet in terms of lechima. And so milchama, it doesn't come with a sense of helplessness or hopelessness. On the contrary, there's no sense of yi'ush. Instead, it comes with a feeling of tikva, hope that what we do will change things. And so, as the Tzitz Eliezer explains, yes, there's a prohibition of tashmish amita, of sexual relations during a time of tzara, but no such prohibition applies in a time of milchama, because a time of milchama is actually underpinned by a desire to build, by a desire to do things positive. And I think the difference is between, shall we call it, a private shiva and the national one. When a person's sitting shiva, those 7 days correlate to the 7 days of creation, but in the 7 days of shiva, you don't create, you don't do things of creative acts, and there's a prohibition of tashmish mita. When it comes to a nation, though, though obviously there are many families who sadly have to sit shiva and bury their loved ones, as a nation, we're fighting. And we're fighting means we're doing something positive with our energies, doing volunteerism, and we don't hold back from positive things. Instead, we pursue them. We seize a moment. We've seen these great videos of couples getting married in Shetach. I mentioned about this couple that, please God, I'm going to be wedding not too far from where I live. And so milchama is not et tzara. There is tzara within milchama. But we fight unlike other nations. And this is the uniqueness of the Jewish people. It's what we say in the Hadran when we finish Masechet. They run to do bad things, and we run to do good things. They run to hurt people. We run to save people. And that's what we're doing. That's what our nation is doing, which is why there's a heta, and more than that, I'd argue even a demand that even amidst the time of war, we try and do things to build ourselves, build our families, build our country. Like I said, with the ruling of the Achiezer, and here with the ruling of the Tzitz Eliezer. So Milchama and Tzara are different, and we should know it. And that talks about our values.
Yes, I love it. I love what you said. It means so much, it's everything we're saying for people who are dating right now, that they need to run to either help people, whatever, but to date. Anytime someone has an offer, assess, of course, if it's a good offer, but don't be trying to run away from the offer. Try to be running towards the offer, that it might be a good offer. People haven't, obviously you have to, it has to be a mindful offer, but you know what I'm saying? It's like there are people like, no, it's a war now. It's not really the best time. And people in life, no matter when, are always, we're always having challenges, right? Like it could be a very stressful time at work, but still go out, still try to make room to keep moving forward in your personal life, to achieve that. In order to get to that relationship, you have to be able to go on that first date, right? In order to have to go on the first date, you have to prepare your mind mentally to, and that's also a place that I'm also gonna just say, people feel like they have to try to be really ready to date and like really work on their mindsets beforehand. No, just say yes. And put yourself, like, go do those high vibration things, go, exercise, or go to volunteer somewhere, call up a friend, how you doing, try to do something good for someone. It'll make you feel more positive. And don't say, oh, in about a week I'll be ready to start dating. I'm into more like, just say yes. You'll go, by the time Tuesday comes around, from Sunday, you'll be already ready. Not to keep pushing things off, just keep things moving forward. But I love what you're saying, is that we need to build Am Yisrael. We need to, during the time of Milchama, we need to build, we need to create, and also to be able to not expect, I think this is a very important piece with dating, not expect that through my effort that I'm certainly going to meet the right person. No, we need to keep doing efforts. And when the right time is, that's when when God brings that right person to you. But the fact is that we just need to keep doing our efforts and keep, davening, and that's our job, and we can't be depressed when it doesn't happen yet. Meaning we can, we're human, but the mindset has to be more neutral. And that just like the positive activities that I am doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. The right time, that's when we're supposed to meet.
And I'll just throw one further thing, which is, though we're speaking about dating, I mentioned about Tashmish, of course, there's dating after marriage. And
yes,
those who are listening, anybody who's in a relationship already, and both of you are in the same kind of neighborhood or married, and you're thinking, maybe we shouldn't go out for a coffee because it's a war, I say, date.
Yes.
Date, because relationships require investment, just like we spoke about before. And in fact, my wife and I, last week, we went out for a coffee, Motzei Shabbat, nothing exciting. And I went, the first few weeks after this all began, all the stores were silent, everything was closed. But we went last week, and some local stores were busy, and I was just so happy. I was like, Baruch Hashem, people are out. Look, we're not naive, we're all feeling the pain, but people need to be able to go out to date. They need to go out and strengthen relationships. And we spoke about Tashmish as well. It's essential. And so people shouldn't feel bad. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to do a billion selfies, be sensitive to where we are as a people.
Yes.
But in terms of your private life, no, it's okay.
Yes, 100%. I give a course called Date Your Spouse. And I just gave it for the Eden Center. And it's exactly what you're saying as well. I mean, of course, we're talking about in times of war, but date your spouse always, constantly, as if, just keep dating. I tell couples who are getting married, just keep dating, it just, now it's even better that you're married, but at the same time, don't forget that magical connection that you have, and just keep building it, make it even better and better by just, ask your spouse out on a date. I love it. Absolutely. I'm so happy you brought that up.
My pleasure. But just before we wrap up, and we've had already a wide-ranging conversation, I do want to just raise a question, which is obviously we're not going to answer it all. Because I do the spiritual coaching and help people with different halachic questions and hashkafic questions. And oftentimes it comes to bear in terms of dating, right? How one identifies. And I'll tell you something I told actually a young person who's currently dating who just reached out to me for a different reason a few weeks ago. And they said, listen, how I live is basically more observant than necessarily my resume, right? So what do? I said, well, when you're telling somebody about you, tell them how you live. Say that you get up every morning at 6 o'clock and you learn for an hour. And then after davening, you do more learning, you give tzedakah. People care often less about what you did 10 years ago. Right. They care that you did that yesterday.
Right.
And so there's a living resume and then there's a historic resume. But overall, especially in times of crisis, a lot of our religious faith, for some, has been tested, is being challenged. For some, it's been strengthened. A lot of people are going through a spiritual metamorphosis. How are you seeing that manifest in the work that you're doing?
Okay, first of all, when I speak to each person for that hour and a half, religious level is very important to discuss. So,
sure.
So I meet with people who are religious, whatever, like very, if you want to say, to people who are not religious at all, or say they're not, and then and then everything in between. So I really see the whole gamut. And to me, it's about what they're doing. That's what I really also focus on. And we're human. I like to say that. So today I might be one thing, tomorrow is another thing, but approximately what's important to you, like, what do you try to do? It's that muscle that we're building as, and strengthening daily, or not, depending on the person. Like, what is important? Is it Shabbat, is kashrut, is it davening, is it learning, or is it that being Jewish is important to them, and whatever that is with the holidays or whatever it is. So I really do see all of the types, and specifically, I like to say, be the person you want to meet, be that person religiously of the person you hope to meet. If you hope to meet somebody who cares about, praying, davening, daily, then try to be that person who does. It's also interesting with the man-woman thing. Like, I'll have sometimes a woman say, I don't have time to daven, but I want the guy to daven. And I'm like, well, be the person you want to be who you want to meet, so I won't necessarily say that depending on who that person is, but it's my recommendation. So even if it means, let's say you want them to daven 3 times a day in shul, and you didn't even say, you don't even try to say brachot, since I try to say brachot, like try to say the early morning blessings and not necessarily the whole tefillah. But that's only when I feel comfortable to give that recommendation, because I have a different role than you do in terms of, spiritual.
Well, I do have quite a lot of female clients who talk to me about prayer, and prayer is precious to people, but sometimes people feel a blockage about prayer, and helping them through that is something. I just had a session with somebody an hour and a half ago exactly on that topic. So yeah, that's something which regularly arises both with people who are not married and those people who are married. Both in terms of time availability, but also how we define prayer itself. People often don't realize they're praying even when they don't realize they're praying. I want to tell you, listen, you think you're not praying, you're actually praying. But and let me tell you where you're doing that. Know that you're a praying person. Don't label yourself otherwise. You're just struggling to find 20 minutes to read from a siddur. That's different to being somebody who doesn't daven. A lot of people.
Exactly. I have people who say that they pray outside of the siddur. Okay, great. Because to me, what's important, it's not, in my role, what's important is to understand the person and what they are, like religious, meaning regarding religious topics, and then the type of person they want to meet, and how that can work together and fit together, like a comfortable fitting puzzle piece. I like to say that it's not like the kind you're trying to fit in, and like it doesn't really fit that puzzle piece. It like comfortably fits. And there are a lot of reasons, whether it's their personality and the attraction, etc. And then the religious piece is also there. So it's a matter of like that all fitting comfortably together. And also age-wise, it depends on their ages, like if they're in their early 20s and want to build a family together, that's one thing. But if they're in their 40s, 50s, they already built their families or didn't have the opportunity to, but they're at a different stage in life. So religiously, it could fit differently. Regarding the religious question, I think it's the discussion. I think that the discussion itself is helpful to people. It's like I'm sure you see this when, like you just described that. I also can describe that, like just them sometimes coming and discussing it with me, and I'm receiving. I'm not necessarily giving advice in this area to people because it's what they are religiously. It depends on the person and what they want from me, and it's easy to tell based on our conversation. But what I feel is just discussing it makes them realize what they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it helps them realize the type of person they want to meet. And sometimes they'll, like you said, they'll label themselves one way. And really that's not close to how other people would see that. Because I'm hearing what they're doing, whether it's more religious, less religious, whatever it is, that they see a label, but really I know a lot about how people label. I personally don't like labels. And that's why I meet with the people to understand them well enough. But when they have to put a label on a dating site and I say, what are you labeling yourself? They'll tell me what they're labeling themselves at. I'm like, really? Like maybe consider this label instead when you have to on a dating site. I don't use that kind of concept, but, because it's attracting the wrong person. That's what you were asking me. It's attracting the wrong person because they don't understand what the label actually means, right? So then they're like, I don't understand why that site keeps sending me the wrong types of people. Well, I'll tell you why. So, I explain it to them, and this is what more maybe close to this kind of label. Now, I personally don't like the labels. I'd rather get to know the person and their personality and their intentions and their it's really their how they view life, their approach. So to me, that's more what it's about. And then I'm able to see that with the approach of the other type of the other person to see if it's a fit. It's their attitudes. That's the word. It's their attitudes and where they want to be. And we keep talking about reaching goals, and it's where they are and their goal, and combining that whole piece with their personality and age range, etc. But seeing if that's gonna like work for each, like for both of them together. That's what I'm seeing when I see a person. So, so religiously, I think it's important to actually have these conversations with Rabbi Johnny and to, understand.
Well, I use a language non-negotiables, by the way, because I want to know what are your non-negotiables in terms not of labels, in terms of deeds, in terms of action. Because then we have a better understanding. So sometimes people who are married will contact me where there's a tension in terms of religious practice. And I'd say, okay, well, your husband is doing this and you're doing that, and there's a clash, and you need to kind of work things towards improving the situation. So what are your non-negotiables? What are his non-negotiables? You often realize that once you define those, there's only a slight area of disagreement. And this is where I, as a rabbi, may well say, well, actually, there are variations of how to practice that thing. So maybe we can find a way for you to practice that thing where each of you can be at peace. And they say, oh, okay, fine. So figuring things out, it's an important thing. And there's creating an opportunity for creating a Beit Ne'eman Israel. And there's obviously that maintaining that in terms of efforts for maintaining Shalom Bayit and having go-to people such as yourself and on occasion on me as well. And obviously professionals where people need to know that it's okay and sometimes incredibly important to invest in those conversations. It can improve relationships. It can sometimes save relationships.
Yes.
Because somebody outside can say, yeah, actually, you're not as different as you think, or maybe you're a lot more different than you realize. And being honest and having that conversation, as you say.
Yeah.
Okay, we've touched on that, but I think obviously there's a lot more to explore, but I did want to at least address the topic because it's somewhere very much spills over into the work that I do. I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're pretty busy and also juggling lots of different things. Thank you for the time for this conversation. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a Hanukkah gift. Like we're doing this because we think that there are things worthy of being talked about and shared. And if there's something that has spoken to you from this conversation, feel free to visit mariagearchitect.com or me, rabbijohnnysolomon.com. We're both available on social media. And if you have a question specifically on something that either of us have said, if you don't know the details of the other, write to one of us and we'll pass it on. And again, thank you again. Please God, we shall have Besot Tovot. Our soldiers should come home safely. Those who are missing, those who are being held hostage should come home very soon safely. And these questions should then turn into theoreticals of Tashbish Bizman Milchama and dating Bizman Milchama. But until then, I want to echo what you said, which is life is fragile. That's one thing we've all learned from all of this. Time can be snatched from us at any given moment. Seize the opportunities. Live in the moment. There's a famous tshuva of the Radbaz says, if you're in prison and somebody says, when could you be released? Take the next available moment.
Yeah.
Seize the opportunity, seize the day, and maximize the opportunities. And if you need to be lifted by something like Daniella, please do turn to you because you're doing great and holy work. So thank you for that. Thank you for everything. And b'chavat to everybody.
Amen. And let's keep building Am Yisrael.
Amen. Amen.
And all right. Thank you so much, Rav Johnny. This has really been uplifting for me as well. And you do wonderful work. So I appreciate being here with you and discussing. And hopefully people have gained something from, or a lot of things from our conversation. All right. Happy Hanukkah.
You too. Hanukkah Sameach.
Bye-bye.